y'all, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Leighanne and I talk about books. A little bit of a different location for you guys, and I hope that you don't mind know what's going on with my voice right now. I am struggling with a head cold, and so I don't quite sound like myself, but that's okay. So today we are going to be doing my December wrap up. December was the best month that I have had all year long, but there is a reason for that. You want to be in the video? Come here. Come here, Bergnado. Y'all are gonna have to excuse the cat in the background. Hello, baby. Hello. Obviously, 21 books is a lot. However, out of those 21 books, about 10 or 11 of them were middle grade books. So I want to be very clear that I was not trying to boost my Goodreads numbers. I got in my head with it being December that I just really wanted to reread a particular series. You know, that was 7 of the books that I read this month. You know, and again, being middle grade, really easy to get through. So let's just go ahead and talk about some stats real quick. 21 books read total, a total of 5,667 pages, and 29.5 hours of audio, and that actually ends up being half of that time, so let's just say 30, so about 15 hours of audio. When we break down the format, 19 of the books were physical books. I read 0 ebooks this month and listened to 2 audiobooks. For age group, I read 9 adult books, 1 young adult book, and 9 middle grade books. So again, there's a reason that my numbers were so high this month. Author gender, we had 13 male and 8 female authors, 0 non-binary authors, and 0 anthologies. For genres, I read 3 mystery thrillers, 4 contemporaries, 12 fantasy books, and 2 nonfiction books. And the nonfiction books were actually true crime books. And then as far as star breakdown goes, we had 7 5 stars, those all came out of the same series, 5 4 stars, 5 3 stars, and 4 2 stars. So kind of all over the place in terms of ratings this month. So let's just jump right into everything. Okay, so the very first book that I finished this month is Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, and this is book 3 in the Mistborn trilogy. I will not be talking about this book in detail simply because I read this for my highest rated books on my TBR video, so I will be going into detail about those once I have finished the last 3, which I have just started another one. So, but know that I did give this book 4 stars. I enjoyed this better than the second book in the series, and you can look forward to that video later on in January. Next, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the series that I read, and I do own these books in physical format, and I believe that I own them in ebook format as well, but they are downstairs, and I do not feel like going to get them because just going up and down stairs with 8 million books is just too much for me right now. It's hard just going up and down the stairs because I can't breathe. But that is the Chronicles of Narnia. So we're in December, and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe especially is like the best book to read during the winter months. It's cozy and it's so nostalgic for me. Definitely one of the series that got me into reading as a kid. I had old copies that were my mom's, and I hadn't read them since 2011, and I just really got in my head that I wanted to read them. But I really do love the series as a whole, and they obviously got 5 stars. And yeah, there's some issues with them. You know, C.S. Lewis was kind of a prude, but you know, when you look at the series as a whole and the stories as a whole, I just love them. So 5 stars. So the next 2 books that I read were Pop Kids and Love Fast Los Angeles, both by Davey Havok. I gave both of those books 2 stars, and I do have my physical copies, but once again, they're downstairs. I struggled with those books quite a bit, unfortunately, which I really hate because I really love Davey Havok as an artist just in general, but unfortunately his books just didn't work for me. I gave them 2 stars. As I said, I probably would have given them 1 star had they not been written by Davey Havok, so there's a little bit of bias there for you. If you're interested in seeing my full thoughts, I did talk more about them and my lowest rated books on my TBR video, and I will link that card up above so you can watch that if you're interested. The next book that I read is The Hazelwood this is by Melissa Albert. So I very much enjoy dark fairy tale vibes, and I had been told that that's kind of what this was. And it was just okay. I ended up giving it 3 stars. The first half of this book and the second half of this book felt like 2 completely different things, unfortunately, and so it just didn't feel very cohesive. I did very much enjoy the whole idea of the fairy tales and like the hinterland and all that kind of stuff. However, Alice's character I just really hated, and I feel like we were maybe supposed to hate her. So if that's the case, she did her job, but I don't know, this book just didn't grab me in the way that I was expecting it to, and I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to be a series, maybe, and I just didn't love it enough to probably continue on with the series, unfortunately. So I actually will also be unhauling this book. I don't ever see myself rereading it. I didn't love it enough to. But one thing that I will say is you can see how absolutely gorgeous this book is. It has beautiful end pages. I don't think there's anything on the Naked book. No, there's nothing on the Naked book. It is a really pretty book. Maybe somebody will like it better than I did, but it just didn't speak to me in the way that I thought that it was going to. So next, I read Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. This is another book that I actually do have a physical copy of, and I left downstairs. I actually won my copy in a Twitter giveaway by Catherine Arden, and it's signed, and I will cherish it forever. Catherine Arden is the author of the Winter Night trilogy, which I absolutely love, and so I was really excited to get my hands on her first middle grade debut. And I thought that it was a lot of fun. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This book was really fun. It's creepy, but not overly creepy, seeing as it's middle grade. So think like Goosebumps vibes, but with like more character development. I think that that's an adequate way to put it. So I definitely really enjoyed it as a whole. If you're looking for just, you know, a quick read, something fun, something creepy, especially in the fall months, I would recommend picking it up. Next, I kept with the middle grade fantasy and picked up the second in the Fairyland series by Catherine M. Valente, and this is The Girl Who Fell Beneath Fairyland and Led the Rebels There. I read The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland years ago. It's been a long time now, and it took me a while to get into it, I remember, but once I really got into it, I really loved it, and I do really love Catherine Valente's writing. This is obviously fun fantasy about Fairyland and a young girl that goes there. You know, one of the things that she does throughout the book is she puts in like these little bits of wisdom, and I think if you were a child reading them, they might go a little bit over your head, but as an adult, you know, it just talks about growing up and how children don't have hearts and that kind of thing, and just, again, these little bits of wisdom where you read it and you're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. That's such a good little... It was just full of things like that, and I loved that about it. You know, aside from that, it's a really fun story and a really fun setting. It's a really fast-paced, quick read. I managed to get through this, I think, in like 2 sittings. She parallels things that are going on into Fairyland with like real-world events, and you know, this takes place during, I think, World War II, if I remember correctly. But overall, it's just a really fun story. I won't talk too much about the story, seeing as this is the second in the series, but if you like middle grade fantasy, and if you've read Catherine Valente's, like if you've read space opera and you enjoyed that, I would recommend giving this a try. So from there, I went ahead and picked up the third in the series, which is The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two. And again, this is pretty much the exact same as the last one, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. I do have 2 more left in the series. It's fun to revisit September and her friends and things like that. But I have 2 more left to go in the series. I was gonna go ahead and finish out the series, but I got like fantasied out. And so I needed to set them down, and I wanted to make sure that like I was going to enjoy them. So again, but same thing, much more. I think that one of the things that I really loved about this one in particular is this gears more towards like actually growing up, because in this one, September is a little bit older and she's kind of in that in-between phase. She's not exactly a young kid, but she's not really a young adult yet, and like that very weird phase in child's life. And I just thought thought that, once again, those little bits of wisdom that she put in there, you know, were really good and really relevant, and I really enjoyed that. So next I listened to Manson, The Life and Times of Charles Manson. This is by Jeff Gwynne, and he is actually the author of The Road to Jonestown, which I think this came out before then, if I remember correctly. So I have read, you know, Helter Skelter, and I've read a couple other things about Charles Manson as well, and one of the things that I always felt like it was missing was, you know, more of his background information. Like, I know about the murders and I know about the family, but I really wanted to know more about him before that. And I thought that that's what this book was going to offer. And for the most part, it really did. There was extensive information about his mother's family and, you know, just more about general background about him and growing up and, like, what that experience was like for him. I gave it 3 stars. It was really informative. However, once we got to the last half of the book, once again, we delved into the actual murders themselves and just that information that I was already really familiar with, but it was very well written. And if you haven't read a lot about Charles Manson and you don't want to go into the like trial side of it by reading Helter Skelter, I would recommend you pick this one up. So after reading a true crime like that, I kind of decided that I wanted like a mystery thriller, and I recently hauled Our Kind of Cruelty by Aramina Hall, and I had heard really good things about this, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. There were things that I struggled with about this book, and I have a lot of thoughts, and I actually think that I want to do a single book review on this. There is a lot, I think, that can be discussed about this book and the way that it was written. So just to give you a brief idea of what this is about, you have this couple, Mike and Verity, and they have been together for a long time. And they have this thing that they do where they get dressed up and they go to a bar, and she waits for a dude to hit on her. And he walks up, bro, why are you hitting on my girl, or whatever. And apparently that just, you know, gets them off, and so they go and have sex somewhere. And that's like a thing that they do. Mike and Verity break up, and Mike basically becomes obsessed with Verity. And this story is kind of like that after the breakup and what kind of happens from there. Mike is not an unsympathetic character. However, when we get into the reasons why he is the way that he is, I feel like the author really dropped the ball on that. One of the things that we find out is that Mike went into foster care as a child, and his upbringing wasn't that great. And so what I got out of this is that the author pretty much equated the reason why Mike acts the way that he does is because he grew up in foster care, and I didn't like that at all. I really didn't. One thing that I saw that was kind of missing from a lot of other reviews and stuff that I read, because after I read this, I thought that I didn't like it. And then after I sat on it a few days and I kept thinking about this book, and I ended up deciding that I did like it. But one of the things that I saw that was missing from a lot of the reviews that was there was that I feel like this is very much like social commentary on like rape culture and what it's like to be a woman that is comfortable with their sexuality and they know what they want sexually. You know, women are sometimes demonized for that kind of thing, and I think that this book does talk about that in the last little bit. Not directly, but just in the way that things play out, I really feel like the author really touches on that. I think the reason that I thought that I didn't like it at first is because I noticed that aspect of it and it was enraging. And I think after going back and realizing that that was the point, that, you know, I definitely appreciate this and the way that it was written. So, you know, it is like thrilling and it is suspenseful, but there's a lot more to it than just that, you know, like standard thriller type thing. And so, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't really know. I could completely be reading too much into it, but I did actually end up really enjoying it. So the next book that I ended up finishing up was Antelope Woman by Louise Erdrich. Really bad at saying her name. So this is a multi-generational story about a Native family, and I gave it 3 stars, and I really think that I'm going to need to go through and reread this to really get everything out of it that I need to. There's a lot of magical realism in this book, and because through the very beginning we're jumping from POV to POV and we're jumping from different people in the family, there were times that I did tend to get a little bit confused, and I did have to go back and reread certain passages. And so it took me a while to really get connected to the story, but the back half of the story I did really enjoy. And one of the things that I do want to do, because I did pick this book up and set it down and pick this book up and set it down so many times, is I want to reread it, and I want to reread it straight through. You know, like in a couple of sittings rather than over several weeks time, because it did take me a long time to finish this. But I did really like her writing. Her prose is really magical. Again, like that magical realism piece of it, like that native mysticism is really well done. I did really enjoy it once I got into the second half of it, so I would recommend it, and I definitely plan on rereading this at some point within the next 6 months maybe. Next book that I picked up is Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough, and I gave this 2 stars. So many people were like, oh my god, the twist ending, like, oh my god, I am shook. Okay, so I'll give you the twist ending, but there's a difference between having a twist ending that makes sense and one that doesn't. So let me start out by saying that this book definitely has a supernatural twist to it, and it doesn't say that anywhere on the cover, but I'm just letting you know right now. It's not exactly a spoiler. I would have wanted to know that there was a supernatural twist to it going into it. The first part of this book is definitely slower as we're getting to know the characters and their lives and really like setting things up for the back half of the book. But, you know, once the story really gets rolling, it was fine. I kind of guessed what was going to happen about halfway through the book. That's not the reason that I gave it 2 stars, because there's really kind of 2 separate reveals within this book. So, you know, we go through, things happen, we get to the first reveal, and I'm like, okay, that's what I thought we were gonna see. And that's fine. And then there's this secondary reveal where it's like, and you just threw that in there for the sake of throwing that in there. There is absolutely zero setup for it, and it doesn't make any sense. It just no. I was mad whenever I read it, and I kind of wanted to throw this book across the room, to be completely honest. I have no problem with twist endings. I have no problem with the fact that there was like a supernatural element to it. I had a problem that you did a reveal that you didn't set up and didn't make any sense to the characters. I don't know, maybe I'm missing it. Who knows? But I didn't enjoy this the way that I thought that I was going to. So I'm actually going to unhaul this because I will never reread it. The next book that I got from my library was The Innocent Man by John Grisham. This is another true crime book. It is about 2 different murders that take place in Ada, Oklahoma in the 80s. And there are 4 men that are arrested, 2 for each crime. And the further that you look into the evidence, the further it looks like things didn't happen the way that the police made it out to seem. So I gave this book 3 stars. It was really interesting. I ended up picking it up because I saw that there was the series on Netflix and I wanted to read the book before I watched the series, and I'm glad that I did because there were several things that were left out, that were in the book that were left out of the series. And so, you know. But anyway, it was well written, it was engaging, I did listen to the audio, and the narrator was very good. And so if you're a fan of true crime and you haven't picked that one up yet, then I would suggest you do. Next book that I picked up is The Last Time She Lied by Riley Sager. This is his 2nd book. I read Final Girls last month, and it was just okay. This I didn't like, and I have come to the conclusion that I do not like Sager's writing, and I don't like his characters. When you look at the plot of this book as a whole, I didn't dislike it. I thought that whenever you look at the plot of a thriller, like, this was well done. What I didn't like about it, like I said, were the characters. So and just the way that he writes. And so, like, in both of his books, you have these women that have been through, like, these traumatic events. And so because they've been through these traumatic events, like, they're these broken individuals, you know, struggling to cope with their trauma, which is fine. Like, that is what it is. But he does this thing where it's like, you know, okay, well, this thing is happening and this person thinks this, but they don't know the things that I did. My eyes honestly can't roll back into my head like any further. It's ridiculous because at the end of the day, I'm going to spoil it for you. She didn't do anything. Like, she said some mean stuff, but she didn't do anything. And so I really struggled with that aspect of it. It was just no. But again, like, and I was disappointed that I hated his characters and his writing as much as I did, because again, like, whenever you look at the plot as a whole, like, it was a decent thriller. But I don't think that I'm ever gonna read another book by Riley Sager. I'm just not a fan of the way that he writes. So, you know, if you like thrillers, I am in the huge minority with not liking this book. Everybody loved it, and you know, the reveal at the end was done really well, and again, I liked that aspect of it. But there's just, I'm just don't like his writing, so there's that. And the very last book that I finished this month is The Girls by Emma Cline. Basically what this book is it's like a fictionalized version of the Manson murders, but it focuses on the women that were in the group, and it does not talk about the murders themselves until the very, very, very last bit of the book. But it's more or less talking about the girls that were, you know, involved in the murder, and how they kind of got drawn into that. There's a lot of talk about sexism and sexuality and things of that nature, and I just thought that it was really well done. I just finished this book last night, and so I'm not like fully, I don't have my thoughts fully together on it, because it's definitely character driven. There aren't very many things that happen in the way of plot. It's definitely not a page turner, but I liked what it had to say about, you know, sexism. It's very, very obviously based on the Manson murders themselves, like, if you know anything about the way that that happened. But I don't know, I really liked it. Maybe I can be more articulate later. I think this is another book that I want to do an actual review on, because just the way that it talked about things, but I need to get my thoughts together on it. So there's that. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in the month of December. I would say that it was a pretty good month. Have you read any of these books? If you have, comment down below and let me know what you thought of them. So from here, we will be going through and doing stat videos for 2018, because I know that that's the last book that I'm gonna finish. It's a couple days before the end of the month, but I did just start The Name of the Wind, so there's no way I'm gonna finish that before the end of the month. So from here, you're going to see my face a couple more times when I film my best and worst of and my stats videos and all that kind of stuff, and listen to my raspy sounding voice as well. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. You can connect with me on any of my social media platforms. All the links can be found in the description below. As always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.